All right, welcome back to another episode of Insight into Insight, all things societal. I am your host, Lord Danavan Hylton, where we talk everything from business, government, to civics / community relations. And so in this particular case, I have a good friend of mine and founder of the Price of Freedom Foundation, nonprofit organization. We're going to get into my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Davis Schroader. Dennis Schroader. Mr. Schroader, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Donovan. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this program.
More than welcome. And correct me if I'm wrong, the Price of Freedom Foundation, we're going to discuss the mission and the vision, and correct me if I'm wrong, of serving Gold Star families by telling their stories of their cherished fallen who put the ultimate price of freedom, of American freedom, on the line. Is that what I understand?
That is correct. That is correct. We are telling the full life stories of those who died while in service to our nation. Now, of course, someone who has passed from this life into the next, we're not really serving them so much as we are serving their loved ones, their friends, their family, and we're serving the nation by bringing the details of their life to the front, to awareness, by being able to capture that and preserve it for future generations. And that's what we're all about.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I'm going to make sure that the listeners understood your name, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Schroader, ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Schroader. And before we get into recognizing the fallen as far as our military in this unique perspective, if you don't mind letting the audience know, how did you and I originally connect?
Well, Donovan, you and I originally connected through, two different organizations in the little town that I live in, White House, Tennessee. I believe the first time that we met, it was an event where we were talking about LifeWise Academy. That's a mutual friend of ours, Patrick Myers, was very fervent for this, very excited about what they are doing and what they're planning to do here in our local community. And then the second meeting was at a group of Christian leaders here in White House, an effort by someone also involved with the LifeWise Academy, Gary Bull, who wanted to bring the leaders of churches and then just people who are passionate about their faith in Christ together, and I think that was the event that we were where we started really talking about what we're doing and what you're doing, and wanted to kind of see if there are some synergies there.
Absolutely. And speaking of the conference, are you a pastor yourself as well, Lieutenant?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. And Gary, I keep asking Gary, what do you want me? I'm just an ordinary guy that doesn't have any official position with the church that I attend, but I know he knows my heart, and I know that I do serve at the church I attend, which is Life Church in Hendersonville, and I am one of, I think, about 7 photographers on their photography team. And I think I know for me, it's a real blessing to be able to be asked to use a gift that I believe God has blessed me with, photography, and use it to benefit the body of believers and the church that I'm attending. And so that was just, that's the only real connection in terms of church. I think have been thinking about leadership in general as well, and of course serving 24 years in the Army and getting to the rank of lieutenant colonel, I have to have exhibited at least some leadership capability.
I understand. I can imagine, and thank you first and foremost for your service.
Absolutely.
Country of America, and it's so much I definitely want to unpack with you. And before we get into the actual organization, I want to make sure that the listeners know who you are, know your story, so they can really see the vision of what you and your team are creating here. And as far as serving in the military, what was the motivation, to join the military first and foremost, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, absolutely. I don't mind that at all. I was born into a Navy family. My father was an enlisted man in the Navy in the 50s and 60s. I was born in 1956. I was born at the Navy Hospital in Oakland, California, and we moved all over the place following him during his career. And by the time I entered high school was about the time that he retired. So I was thinking positively about the military life and wanted to join the Navy. During high school, I joined an organization called the Sea Cadets, which was a sort of a precursor, kind of like a JROTC, but it was really geared towards enlisted service. I did well in high school. My father suggested that I apply for the officer programs for ROTC because there was no way that that he could help me financially to go to college. So I applied for I think all of the services ROTC programs. I was offered a scholarship by both the Navy and the Army, but it turns out I have a slightly defective color vision. And so the Navy said, you can be a Marine. And I was not at that point in time in my life interested in becoming a Marine. So I took the Army's offer and didn't really have much thought beyond that of the fact that I was going to be the first in my family to go to college, and that that was it. I mean, the Army was the pathway, and it just kind of unfolded thereafter. It's not like I was one of those guys that had, this is it for sure, I want to make a career. No, that was not it. But God has ways to kind of shape our lives and direct our paths. And before I knew it, 20 plus years had gone by.
Well, I follow you. And just to be sure, when you started and enrolled into college, were you already enrolled in the Army at that time, which helped pay for college, or was that after?
No, I had not. I had no official connection to the military. I was simply like any other student who joins ROTC in college. That was me, except I happened to be one of those that was on a 4-year scholarship.
And what did you study while you were attending college?
Well, I thought I was going to be a math and computer science major because I did well at that in high school and took some advanced placement courses, got some college credits that way. But my second semester at UCLA disavowed me of that notion. I flunked both my second semester programming class and my second semester calculus class, and I had been in a small school environment in high school. It was a small Jesuit high school in Tacoma, Washington, Bellarmine Prep, and my smallest class at UCLA was probably 100 students my freshman year, and I could never connect with the teachers assistants. I just floundered. I was able to change my major to psychology because all through my high school years, everybody said that they felt like they could pour out their heart to me and like to nobody else. So it's like, okay, well, let me, and plus I was trying to figure my own silly self out. So I wound up changing majors and changing universities, too, to improve my GPA. So my second part of the undergraduate experience was at Seattle University. And so I graduated from there in 1978 with honors, actually. So it was a good move.
So how did the role of or how did the transition into the military? You're doing ROTC or programs similar to it. How did that transition happen after you graduated college?
Well, they send you off to on graduation. What they do is they have a ceremony after you receive your the diploma, and they commission you. You basically take the oath of office, and now you are officially in the military, and you are a second lieutenant. They give you orders that says, depending upon the branch of the specialty branch that you have, they send you to different places and at different times to start your officer basic training. Think of it like boot camp for gentlemen. So no, you didn't get yelled at by drill sergeants unless you really, really, really messed up. But yes, you did have to be there and form up at certain times, and they put you through some physical fitness stuff. And because I was Medical Service Corps, I'm sure mine was even a little bit more comfortable than the others, because they also had actual medical professionals. They had doctors and nurses and dentists and veterinarians, etc., in the class, and they didn't want to scare those people off. So they wanted those folks to stay around. An admin guy like me, it's like, okay, well, they could afford to lose us if they had to, but since we were batched with all the rest of them, we got the benefit of the kind of kid glove treatment, I guess.
Wow. And during that transition, when you actually graduated and you're getting ready to get started, with your military career, especially with your family having a Navy background, how was that between you and your family actually now stepping into the military role? What was that experience?
Well, I was at that time. I actually a personal. I was one of those guys that didn't do everything right, and I did wind up getting a girl pregnant, and I married her while I was in college, so I did have a young family. I had my son, who had been born 3 months prior to my graduation. Wow. And my wife. They basically stayed with her family until I had completed my officer basic course, and then joined me when we went to my first assignment, which was at Fort Stewart, Georgia. So she drove from Tacoma, Washington, down to San Antonio, Texas, with the baby, and then we drove together to Fort Stewart, Georgia. And yes, I mean, being out on your own, in a sense for me, because I was not staying at home at my parents' place during my college years, yeah, that's a little scary, but, it's getting your own apartment and paying your own bills was not new to me. So it really wasn't that big of a difference, adjustment that way. And I was getting paid a whopping $800 a month for my base pay, and I was in high cotton, so to speak. I was loving life. I had more money than I'd ever had before in my life. So it was it wasn't a bad transition at all.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your 24-year experience, in the military. Some of the things that you remember, some of the things that really touched your heart, if you don't mind, and things that maybe just a civilian would not really know anything about, right. And can get a greater appreciation for what the military process and experience is. So how was that experience for you?
Sure. Well, I mean, part of the things that I experienced that I guess most folks who didn't serve wouldn't know is, number one, you got to be willing and able to go wherever they tell you to go, whenever they tell you to go. So getting the assignment to Fort Stewart, Georgia was not high on my list. I'll put it that way. It was definitely a Camp Swampy kind of experience. And I struggled with that because I was used to the Pacific Northwest with the moderate climate, the mountains, all of that. And here I go to, coastal Georgia, and it is the exact opposite. Swamps and high heat, high humidity, and lots of bugs. And anyway, I just wound up eventually paying attention to the fact that several of the soldiers in my platoon that I was responsible for were from the area, and they were loving life. They were having a grand time, and here I was miserable. And I'm thinking to myself, what's the difference here? Is it the environment? No, it's the individual. So I wound up through a long process of struggling to figure out how I could change my mindset to enjoy the place. And because I had loved photography and had picked up the camera and loved taking pictures in high school, I was able to appreciate the beauty of that stinky, sticky swamp. It was, there were times a day that it was very beautiful. And so it made that transition.
What time of the days were they, or were those?
Mornings and evenings. Sunrise and sunsets are gorgeous. Absolutely. And so it's going to be different for every person, but I think the ability to recognize that it's how we approach a situation, the mindset we take to it, that can allow you to adapt and prevail, I guess, in whatever changes life sends your way. In terms of other things that I did, I'd say one of the more interesting and sort of scary going into it was there was a winter exercise in Alaska. I was a company commander at the time. I was at Fort Lewis. I had a medical company that supported an armored battalion or brigade. And we were part of a task force that was going up to Alaska in the middle of the winter to play the OPFOR, or opposing forces. The scenario was that Russia had invaded Alaska to attack the oil pipeline up there. This was back in the early 80s. And there was a lot of preparation that we did to go and participate in that. And it was scary from my perspective, mostly because I was responsible for 60-some people that were going up there under my command. Plus, we were going to be the field medical support to an entire brigade.
Colonel,
yes.
sorry to cut you off, but the time that you actually started and went through training to that moment when you are now overseeing and managing 60 people, how long had it been, that time span in between?
Oh, well, from, let's see, it was about 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
So, one of the good things that the military does is they will give you training, and then they'll throw you into a position of responsibility where they expect you to do it. But, you're not, they don't take the time, and they really can't, to give you all the possible things you're going to face. And so, more so than most organizations, I believe that they are great at stretching you and giving you some basic tools and telling you, go get the job done, and here's the responsibilities, make it happen, kind of thing. So yeah, that was a very big experience, and believe me, no matter what they do, they didn't prepare you, or didn't prepare us for stepping off an airplane at 47 below zero. We had all the equipment and gear on, but the effect of taking your first breath was not something I was expecting. But because what happened And I'll tell you, if you ever go up there, what happens when you step out into that kind of environment is with every breath that goes in, the hairs inside your nose freeze. And with every exhalation, they thaw. And there's a reason why they have those big mittens with the woolly cover on the backside, so they can wipe that drippy stuff away. Yes. I found that out very quickly. But otherwise, all the equipment worked. We had 0 cold injuries for the entire brigade for the month that we were up there, and in fact, we had about a half dozen heat injuries, and that's because the young troops that were with the infantry that were marching out through on the tundra, the snow and ice, kept everything buttoned up. And part of the training had been you unzip your parka and you ventilate as you start walking, because otherwise you're going to build up too much heat. Well, they didn't believe it, so they wound up with trench foot, heat exhaustion. So.
See, wow. So I'm thinking, and I do want to jump into the organization, but this to me gives me a better understanding of recognizing those that have fallen. But we got to know respectfully the process of of just the day-to-day, to really appreciate it. So, like you said, I can imagine 60 people, and these individuals are, in this particular scenario in Alaska, 60 people, I'm sure from all over the country that really don't know how to build a work relationship.
From all over. I mean, that's one of the things, my experience growing up on military bases is that you meet people from all over. And you are, in a sense, in an insular community because you're all with other military kids. But these are people who come from all over the country. And so I just knew that, I talked to folks that grew up in the 50s and 60s, same time frame I did, but they didn't have that military background. And it's like, I didn't have an issue with all of the racial divides and stuff that were going on during that time frame, because these kids were kids that I grew up with. These were kids that were, in some cases they were my friends, and in other cases they were bullies in the neighborhood, and I feared them, and but it's like it didn't matter what skin tone somebody was. It's like it's who was going to pick on me because I was the new kid. But so that was one good thing that I felt that came out of that. Now, moving and changing grade schools 9 times in 8 years was not fun, because I was always the new kid. But I've come many years later to appreciate the fact that doing that gave me a resilience in making changes and transitioning and picking up and starting over and all of that. So some people that can't get past that. I was fortunate that I was able to.
So what is it that brings, you have so many different people coming together, to join the military? What is it, and I just so we can be clear and we can know as listeners, what is it that actually binds and unifies, a team of individuals for a common goal? What is that?
Well, I would say it's a common identity, meaning that we all wear the same uniform. We're all in the same unit. We are all part of a specific team just by fact of being assigned to it. So the military gives a sort of a structure to that people can then kind of, okay, I'm in the 5th of the 32nd Army. I'm a tanker, or I'm a mechanic, or I'm a medical platoon support, but we're all part of this same organization. I think the other thing you mentioned was mission, in the sense that, okay, what we're doing in most of the years, all of the years that I was really in, was we're preparing to be ready to go and confront the Soviets at the time in Europe, should they invade. And so being prepared to go. And ready to do your combat mission, but also ready to do all the logistics stuff that it takes to get you there. And so that sense of purpose and mission brings folks together. I would say for those that actually went to combat, the fact that you put your life on the line and your buddy put their life on the line at the same time for each other is probably creates an even stronger bond than what I was able to experience, because I was never in a combat situation. And I mean, I'm not saying that I wanted to be, but I recognize that there is a difference. Those who actually face that sort of very real and immediate threat to life.
We're going to actually jump into the combat aspect. The combat aspect of this conversation. But before we jump into that, we're going to take a second to recognize our Inside Information segment powered by Hylton Elite Marketing Agency. And so the question that we have for you, so we can all learn and grow, is how can a civilian best serve and honor America's active military personnel from your perspective?
From my perspective, I would say that the best way somebody can honor and serve those that are serving now is to support the organizations that are there advocating for them. So there are NCOA is one that is specifically for the non-commissioned or enlisted ranks, and I would say that's a great organization to. You don't have to be a military member to support them. I would say probably the easiest thing because lots of times we need something easy because there's so many other distractions going on. I would say that seek out and follow, like, and comment on social media posts that are in favor of things that the military do, and talk to those that you may know who are in, and listen to them. You don't have to. I know a lot of folks over the past decade or so, have taken to saying thank you for your service. It kind of, and I appreciate that. I understand where that's coming from in their heart. But to a certain respect, it's like it's almost like the how you doing kind of things. Like, okay, you expect somebody to say I'm doing great. You don't really want to know the bad evening that I just had. So I'd say if you can take the time to have a more in-depth conversation. I'd say that makes a lot of difference. Typically, knowing that somebody is interested in really what's going on in their lives. There's lots of other ways folks can do it, but then those are the things that off the top of my head people don't really think about necessarily, and ways that I think actually would make a difference in an individual's life.
And most definitely, I appreciate that. And speaking of having more in-depth conversations with veterans, I never really knew, because I don't know what a veteran may have went through while they were in active duty. So I never want to try to bring up anything that may be painful or just, I would be respectful. I have no idea. How do you find for a civilian that balance, or is it, is it okay to have those in-depth conversations, or?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say, the fact of the matter that that somebody is wanting to listen to me and to have a real curiosity about what my experiences were. That's, for me, I appreciate that, because that way they may get a little bit of an understanding, and I would say there's folks who are the soldiers and Marines who have experienced real combat trauma may not be in a place where they can really share that. but there's a lot of other stuff that they can talk about. And you know, if you're just talking to a veteran, you know, engage in a conversation with them about where they're at and what they experienced in a way that you're saying, hey, I'm really interested in knowing. Not that if you go in there and they get the vibe that you've got an agenda, you're going to get shut down. But if you're really just being an honest, genuine person that says, hey, your experience is not the life experience I've had, and I'm interested in knowing more about that, I think most veterans would be willing to share that with you. So I don't know what else to say beyond that. I mean, yes, I know. From my perspective, yes, it's a different experience, but having lived it, it's the kind of experience that I think most folks could do if they chose to.
We definitely want people to choose to do this, and this is why I'm so excited to have you on the show today, and get to know your background, your history. But I definitely want to jump into the Price of Freedom Foundation, and as you see how you're able to get in more detail and in-depth with the military personnel that have fallen, as well as, like you said, help where people can support. How can they support? And like you said, support the organizations that are advocating for the military. And the Price of Freedom Foundation was something that I had to really stop and recognize. And again, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, but serving Gold Star families by telling the stories of their fallen who paid the ultimate price for American freedom. I think that's pretty much what the website is talking about. And for those that don't know, what are Gold Star families, first and foremost?
A Gold Star family is defined as someone who has lost an immediate family member while they served in the military. So it doesn't have to be combat related. It could be a training accident. It could be the result of somebody being assaulted criminally and dying as a result of that. It could be somebody who had was in a car accident or got sick and died. A Gold Star family is basically anyone who has a spouse, a child, a sibling who died while they were actively serving, and so that's really the definition of Gold Star family. And so you could, if it was myself and my brother had served and died, then I would be called a Gold Star brother. Or if I had a son or daughter that served and died while they were in service, I'd be a Gold Star father. So the umbrella term is Gold Star families.
So if you don't mind, Lieutenant Colonel, can you share a little bit about the motivation of wanting to recognize Gold Star families and the motivation to create the Price of Freedom Foundation? Maybe even starting with, if you don't mind, is it a for-profit business or a nonprofit? The structure and how and the motivation and how you got started.
Sure, it is a nonprofit organization. Number one, 501c3, and we've had that designation for closing in on 4 years now. What the motivation that I had was started a long time ago, and what really bothered me, I guess, when I was growing up, was seeing the negative press that was happening around the soldiers that were fighting and dying and those that came back from Vietnam. And I will say that, as a nation, we did a terrible job and painted people with a brush that they never should have been painted with. I saw that change. I saw that change in the 80s, and things turned around. a lot, and there were more positive movies. We had the President Reagan in the 80s. I know some love him, some hate him, but one thing that he did is he was very, very positive, very upbeat, very supportive of the military. And that combined with movies like An Officer and a Gentleman and Top Gun, I personally felt a difference in the way the public treated me when I was walking around in uniform. It was very much more positive. And that continued on for a long, long time. And then when after the 9/11 and we went to war in Afghanistan and then later in Iraq, I was seeing something I hadn't seen in like forever. In some of the magazines that I subscribed to. I subscribed to GQ and Esquire, and they were starting to have articles where they were talking positively about the lives of some of the soldiers that had fought and died over there. And I was really happy about that at first, but then it just struck me. So, well, why? I mean, it's good that we have some positive press about these individuals, but what about all the others? Because in almost all of those articles, they had mentioned other people who had died essentially at the side of these guys. What about them? You know, what's going on with them? And then we had the national attention when Pat Tillman died over there and his whole story. And I love what the Tillman family has done, and it's wonderful, the work that they're doing. But at the same time, I was thinking, what about the thousands of other families that don't have the resources, that didn't have the notoriety, the celebrity, the story, so to speak? They're just the kid that had a motivation to join and serve, and who unfortunately lost their life in doing so. What about them? The unheard family. So that's really the motivation. Yes, we do things during, and we've got Memorial Day coming up, and I'm glad that we do that. But what do you really see and hear? You hear, you'll see a face. You'll get maybe an in-depth bio, might be 1 or 2 pages, but you really don't have a sense for who this person was. And so what I was thinking about for a long time, and what I really wound up doing, was digging around and asking people questions and finding out the fact that there is some research now that's been ongoing for about the last 15 years or so about grief and military families. And one of the research papers talked about the fact that a very common, in fact, the most common problem that Gold Star families experience is the sense that their loved one will be forgotten and their sacrifice no longer honored outside of that very small circle of people who knew them directly. So, the family, immediate family, friends of the fallen, and those that served with him. And in almost every case, that is exactly what happens. So, we do have situations where, I was talking with a Gold Star mother here before we actually got this off the ground, and her son was lost at sea in the Gulf of Aden, and she lives in Franklin, and they had a bridge named after her son. But she still says nobody knows him. Nobody knows that beautiful, brilliant mind that I was blessed to raise for 19 years. That there is this sense that there's people just don't know. And so what I wanted to do was to be able to take what we have and take the memories, take the all the letters and emails and social media posts, etc. And instead of it being a hodgepodge, which is what it is for somebody looking at it now, to bring it all together and to be able to tell that story, have a narrative that can tell the story from beginning to end and beyond, depending upon how far back in time it was that the person lost their life, and be able to do that both in writing, because I know technologies that were around and were the state-of-the-art 20-some years ago that don't exist right now. So I want something that's going to take advantage of current technology but not be dependent upon it. And so that's why we are producing written biographies and taking all of the interviews that we do and recording them, so that when we have the resources to do so, that we can produce that story in video format as well. So we're working with 4 families currently. Our first story, I have the book ready. I have to proofread it for hopefully the last time on this. It'll be 156 pages. It's the story of Alfonso Abdel Amos, who was born in the Philippines, served in the Philippine Army for a while, and at his father's behest joined the U.S. Navy, became a U.S. citizen. A few years after his joining the Navy, he met his wife also in the Philippines. They had 3 children. 18 and a half years after he joined the U.S. Navy, he was lost at sea and left behind that wife and 3 small children. And so this story, this book, is his story, and it's an exploration of his life, and basically has some aspects of what his loss 24 years ago meant, because it was 98 when he was lost, and it was his children, who were small at the time of his disappearance, that were still wrestling with who is their dad, who was he. And so it's been a voyage of discovery in the process, and at the end we will have this book that was going to be gifted to this family, to each member of the family, so that they can have something that can be passed down to the future generations, hopefully for 100 years or more, so that they've got that person's, their grandfather's story right there. So that's what we're doing. We're doing this. The other 3 families are in research phase thus far. How people can help. Number one, we definitely need financial help. To put a video together, a documentary, putting a book together and video together are expensive matters. People who've not been doing this, which I had not done before, we get shocked. There's sticker shock for sure. But getting an indie filmmaker to do a documentary is going to be about $50,000. Most more established organizations are talking 2 and 3 times that. To put the book together, which we've done on a shoestring, was nowhere close to that, but it's still in the thousands of dollars. So financial contributions would be helpful. When we have the book available to purchase, buy 1, buy 2, buy 3. Donate some to a library or whatever, that gift them to somebody, because of course we make some money off of those sales. Volunteer your time. We have needs for just about anything that somebody can do. So I definitely need somebody. I need people who are good researchers, who can go and dig and investigate and have a curious mind about things, because we have lots of details about these families whose loved one we're honoring. But if you can, somebody who can dig around and say, okay, well, this person was at this place at this time? Who else was there? What class were they in? Who can we find that knew them so that we can set up interviews with those folks and details about what was going on in those kinds of places. So researchers, we definitely need you. I need writers. The writer who wrote our first book, fabulous guy, loved him so much, did a wonderful job for us, but it took him 5 months out of his year, out of his life, to do this. And there's not a lot of folks that are in a position where they can just, give up 5 months without compensation. Mm-hmm. Now, hopefully, we're going to get enough sales. We can offer him a much delayed royalty for that, but we need writers that can help us with this. I'm not a writer myself. I did military writing, and that's not the same. I could definitely use a filmmaker, somebody who knows how to put this together. Our first, our first story, we have over 40 hours worth of video that we've compiled. Nobody wants to sit through 40 hours of unedited video. We need, and I have a couple of video editors, but they need more direction than I can give them. And so I need somebody is essentially a filmmaker who can come in or an aspiring one, somebody who says, hey, this is what I want to do. Let's take a shot at this, and can volunteer their time and services to help us piece this together. I would love to have some musical talent put together for this, because with any video presentation, you want some kind of sound supporting it. I could definitely use people who are graphic artists or art in other forms. I'd love to have a series. In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday about who puts together promotional items, and we're going to have a jacket that's got a couple of patches on and the like. But it's like the only thing that we have that really can be translated to a patch at this moment is our logo. And I like our logo, but I'd like something in addition. And I'm not a graphic visual creator. I do photography, and I can see a scene and kind of capture that, but it's like thinking ahead about what I want and then creating it like the great graphic artists that I've seen can do. That's not me. I can definitely use somebody who can help us design some more graphics that would help promote the story. And we'd love to be able to create challenge coins. So challenge coins are military coins, and I want it to represent the individual that we are honoring too. So I need somebody who's got the graphic design ability that way for that specific application too. I need administrative help. I mean, I'm being pulled through ways to Sunday, and it's like a virtual assistant would be so welcome. And all of these things, I could, if we had the resources, I could hire somebody to do that. But we don't have the financial resources at this time. So anybody has connections with any businesses or corporations that do philanthropic giving or sponsorships, that would be a great connection for us. So like I said, most anything that somebody has the ability to do, we could make use of.
Awesome. And two questions. Where is the nonprofit based as of right now? Its operation.
I'm sorry. I wasn't hearing. The sound wasn't coming through very well on my end here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Where is your operation located?
Where are we located? Well, you're looking at it. This is the dining room of my house. We are entirely virtual operation. we could use office space if it could be donated to us. That would be great. But I live in White House, 312 Christian Drive in White House, Tennessee, 37188. We have members of our board of directors who are, two of them live here in the greater Nashville area and two live in North Carolina. So because we were a very bootstrapping kind of organization from the start, it helped us. I mean, COVID really didn't do anything to us because we were always virtual. But it also means that we can embrace and accept the assistance from folks who are virtual as well. So folks here in the local Middle Tennessee area or Middle Kentucky area, that but if you have an audience and have somebody that is outside this area, we can certainly appreciate and utilize their assistance no matter where they live, as long as it's in the U.S. I have had to say no to some folks that were from other countries that wanted to assist, and just I'm not really certain about I'm hopeful that it was really a heartfelt thing on their part, but I'm cautious about things that may touch on security issues. You never really know what the backgrounds of the people honoring are, and I don't want to create any possible issues with legalities or national security or anything like that. So I'd like to keep our volunteer force to be U.S. based and U.S. citizens.
Absolutely, and there's so much going through my mind, but like you said, supporting the organizations that are advocating for the military and the work that's being done. Respectfully, for example, someone saying thank you for your service, which is great and appreciated, but getting to know the individual in more detail actually gives a sense of a deeper sense of appreciation. That's the same thing that any traditional civilian can do, and the Price of Freedom Foundation is a great way for you to give back. And some of the things, if you're a writer or videographer, graphic designer, if you have any kind of resources, in-kind donations, office space, if you're a business or a corporation that can donate either time or talent or finances, filmmakers. Right now there's 40 hours of unedited video, so if you're into editing or you're aspiring to get into media, this is a great way for you to show support to your military right here. And we hadn't had a chance to really get into the conversation of healing and empowerment and what these documentaries and published books actually give to the family. And so for people to want to invest or donate their time or resources, where can they find your organization online, and what is the best way for them to get in contact with you to either volunteer or sponsor?
All right, super. Well, they can reach me through our website. Number one, I'd recommend you. It's www.priceoffreedomfoundation.org. They can. There's a link there for them to send an email. Probably the easiest there is that it's info@priceoffreedomfoundation.org. They could email me directly as well at D Schroader, and that's DSCHROADER at priceoffreedomfoundation.org. We have presence on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, pardon me, and LinkedIn, all at the Price of Freedom Foundation. And I would recommend folks, ask folks to like and follow us there on all of those. Our phone number, you can call me or text me directly, is 615-389-1867. And those are the best ways to reach us. I appreciate your taking the time, allowing me to talk about about this, and for anyone out there who is listening that has a heart for what we're doing, I absolutely appreciate you reaching out to us, and let's have a conversation to follow up on what that could look like.
That's awesome. And again, we just thank you so much for your service and for just the entire military for their service. And thank you and to the board for recognizing the Gold Star families and just wanting to honor. And I'm sure there's other programs out there, but just with what you can and your board and what you all are able to do, we just thank you for recognizing those Gold Star families. I can only imagine, how much of a healing process that is for them. And that's why I'm thanking the listeners in advance for making sure they reach out to the Price of Freedom Foundation to make sure that you can donate either your time, your talent, or any kind of finances to make sure that we can continue to recognize our military and those that have paid the ultimate price to ensure that America is free. And so again, Lieutenant Colonel, we just thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Schroader. And before we wrap up, we do have one more inside information segment presented by Hylton Elite Marketing Agency. And just Lieutenant Colonel, for those listening, in your experience, especially with military management and going through life, what one piece of advice would you have for the listeners before we part ways?
What piece of advice as a listener in terms of managing people?
And this is a very broad question, just in general.
Okay.
It could be in life, business.
Okay. I would love to be able to talk about folks in business from the standpoint that I see a lot of people who are put in management positions that really weren't prepared for it. And what I would like to say is that I applaud folks who want to go from a line worker, so to speak, to a manager. But the number one thing that I see people fail to do is to take the approach and the attitude that the people who you are responsible for are people first and foremost. That you need to be concerned about them as a person. You need to treat them with dignity, respect, and of course expect a good amount of work in return. But I see it in the workplaces that my family members work in, where I would not consider their managers at all, because they treat people poorly. And I would say you do not need to. That is not a good example for management. It's not a Christian example. It's not a good. It's not an example of something that works long term. And I would say you can stand out if you are going to go into any sort of leadership position, to recognize that it's the team that you're leading that needs to be like people first, mission always, I guess would be the simplest way to say it. But you need to take care of your people, and you need to be able to know that they need to know that you really mean it, and it's not just you saying words that aren't coming from your heart. You have to really care about the people that you're managing, and if they know that you do, and you have a mission that you got to get done, they'll probably come up with ideas that you didn't even have on better ways to get things done and get it done better and faster. So, teamwork that is truly caring and compassion about others as Christ taught us to be.
Wow.
That's it.
I think that's a great, thank you. That's a great lesson for life as well. I'm thinking just in my marriage and just the relationships that I have, it's the team you're leading that needs to be taken care of, and more so that they know that you mean it. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges employers are having right now, where there's a high retention rate because people are feeling like they are not appreciated, and the management does not mean, really what they're saying. So we definitely appreciate that. And I think we're going to table that conversation for another time for you to join us again. We definitely want to make sure we stay in contact and have you keep us updated. We definitely want to continue to get the word out, Lieutenant Colonel.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate your time. Congratulations in advance for your continued success with your professional life and your personal life. Thank you so much for your service again, and we definitely look forward to connecting with you soon.
Same here. Thank you again so much. God bless.
More than welcome. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to another exciting episode of Insight into Insight, All Things Societal, where we talk about civics, business, and community relations. Thank you so much for listening, and we're wishing you continued success in your life, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye now.